Hello everyone, welcome to the first online class for the EO4 course, Designing Learning Experiences for the English Classroom. Uh, uh, I'm Surbhi. I'm your course instructor, course facilitator along with Anusha. Uh, I work with this center called CEIAR at TIS, and we have these range of RTICT courses which we offer, and EO4 is a part of that RTICT program. So welcome, and we are looking forward to an interactive discussion. We are looking forward to your questions and to discuss course overview and certain aspects of the course with you in this first online session. I'll request Anusha to introduce herself. Anusha?
Can you hear me? Yeah, sorry. Uh, so my name is Anusha, and you can definitely we have muted you for now to enable us to talk and not have interruptions as people log in and log out or lose connection. But you can definitely chat and type in the chat box with us. And if you have any problems, do let us know. Raise your hand. There is an option there in order for you to raise your hand, and we will try and pause and reflect on those elements. If you're going too fast, if you're going too slow, do let us know, and we are happy to take on those questions. Welcome all. This is one of our first sessions, and we are happy to have you all with us. Yeah, Survi, go ahead.
Yeah, I hope you're all able to see my screen. Yeah,
Yes.
okay. So this will be the sequence of discussion for today's uh, presentation and to today's course discussions. First, we are going to give you a course overview. Basically, what are the aspects of the course, the weightage, and everything. And then we are going to talk about survey forms, which I'm sure you all must have come across while going through the course. Then we are going to talk about discussion forums, certain aspects that we want to highlight. We will then delve deeper into assignment discussions. We would just want that you are aware of the assignments that are there in the course and how you can take them. And considering the current situation where most of you are teaching and some of you might not have access to students, so we are going to discuss those aspects also. Uh, then I'm sure some of you have done Unit 1. In the session 1, we have talked about task-based language teaching approach. Shortly, we've talked about it. So we thought this is a good opportunity to delve deeper into this concept and maybe take you further into the details, how you can do it in the classroom, etc. Post that, we are going to talk about the backward design approach, which comes in Unit 2. We are just going to touch upon it so that the concepts are clear before you delve into Unit 2 deeply. And then we are going to share some resources with you, online resources, which you can use for language learning and teaching, and even otherwise, resources which can be used beyond language classrooms also. So, yeah. So for EO4, as you must have seen the outline of the course, Unit 1 talks about designing activities for a language skill classroom. It has 7 sessions. You must have seen that the unit is divided into different language skills that you use in your classroom. Unit 2 talks about planning and designing of language lessons. This is basically more of a this is basically more of a planning unit where we talk about principles of planning, how you can plan in your classrooms, etc. Then we talk about the third unit, which is not released yet. Some of you had this question yesterday, but it will be soon released. Unit 3 has 3 sessions. It's about designing lesson assessment. So we're not talking about only larger language-based assessments. We're talking about lesson assessments, which you can include in your plans of language. So that's the focus. If you see the unit-wise weightage, Unit 1 has 30% weightage, Unit 2 and Unit 3 have 35% weightage. These are the two units which have the assignment. So hence the weightage is distributed accordingly. Yeah. So there are 3 units in this course. We've released 2. The third unit we will be releasing by 27th of June, that is this Saturday. We will be releasing the third unit, but still, don't worry if you haven't completed Unit 1 or Unit 2, you can pace it within the deadline of the course. We would also like to highlight that you might have noticed that it is a practice-based reflective course. So a lot of more than the theoretical concept, we have tried to derive it from your teaching experiences, the teaching experiences that we have had, the teaching experiences that we have had through teachers whom we are connected to. So these are the elements of the course, and we request you to kind of share your ideas and activities in the discussion forums. More on this later. I think you all must have explored the progress tab in the course. If you click on progress, the passing grade is 40%. It's indicated there. The course deadline is 1st of August 2020. Another thing that I wish to talk about is the certification criteria. We have mentioned it in the course introduction, but certification means that first of all you need to attempt certain points from each unit, 10 points from each unit. So make sure that you've attempted all units up to this point. You've made sure that you've read through and gone through all the 3 units. You need to upload both the assignments. So assignments, you must have noticed there's one assignment in Unit 2, Session 2, Activity 4. We are going to discuss that assignment in detail later. And in Unit 3, which is not open yet, there's another assignment, which is an implementation-based assignment where you have to implement certain things that you create, but we have given an option due to this COVID-19 situation. Again, more on this later. Another certification criteria is that you need to fill the survey forms. That's an essential criteria since we are associated with this. So we need these formalities and all these details for us to generate certificates for you. So please take out time to fill the survey forms. Yeah, okay. You might have questions. Why is it necessary? Why do we need to fill pre and post survey? So basically, the idea is to get to know the participants better. We sometimes later on personalize these scores on the basis of feedback and accounts that you give, and also improve the course for the next run, because this course is iterative in nature, and we plan to build on your ideas, your experiences, your feedback, and make the experience better with every run. And the pre-course survey ends on 1st of July 2020. So please do take out time to fill out this pre-course survey.
And also just to say that from the administrative point of view, there are certain points in the pre-course survey, such as your gender, which you had optional on the registration, but these are important from the administrative point of view of TIS, because we report to UGC with all of these details. So yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. And Anusha, I'll invite you from this point on to talk about the discussion forum. Yeah, over to you.
Okay, we've had lots of fun working with you on discussion forum, and we have had immense pleasure trying to reach out, and some of the questions you have raised are amazing. Even today we were going through them and working out on the discussion forum. So one is that, of course, it has been very enriching and meaningful. Some of the questions you have raised, such as asking how do I improve spellings and aspects such as that, we have also got back and asked questions, and we're waiting for responses sometimes from participants in a sense. but it would be great if you can talk about the question and respond to each other's questions. Some are very rich. Some people have excellent experience. One of our participants, and I don't know which one of you are here, but is working with a Braille magazine, a language magazine, and just asking those questions about how we can react and how that kind of language teaching and situation and what they are dealing with in those kids will be, I think, useful and illuminating for us to understand. So please take the opportunity to build this as a community of practice for yourselves and work with them. And ask questions, generate ideas, and let us also learn from each other in that sense. We would just to share this screen as such. I'm just going to share my screen for the discussion forum that we have for a minute. What occurs out here is that, of course, when you go to the discussion tab, there are two ways that you can do this. And the TISIX app is different. The TISIX app, of course, will enable you to do the discussion on that question that you would be able to generate. But here also, you can go into discussions. You can definitely post queries. We hope to have this interactive, so that this is going to be not too long. We don't want to talk all the time. We will encourage you and invite you to also talk with us. But if we can't, then please go to question queries and be writing through here. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about was the fact that if you think that we have not responded, please also follow and unfollow our posts. So the star will make that you will follow. So every time that we tag uh, and we respond to your post, you will immediately get a notification. And another thing that I have done is receive updates. So I can get an update once a day. Another kind of option that I can have is to get an update in terms of and not get these update also is a possibility. So please use these kinds of tabs to try and comment and flag each other's posts, etc. And this will show you if there is something new, if someone has not graded, if I have not commented, and it shows me all of that. And yeah, so I think, so there are some questions in this. Definitely the motivation quiz has had this, and we will come back and resolve these queries. And we hope to do that in today's session. But this is a very useful way, and I thought this is as a thread, it can become a very useful thread for the same problem that you have to be showcasing and looking at these posts and responding to queries. Of course, you're most welcome to add new posts. And we have enjoyed having all those new posts that you have put in introductions, where each one of you has had a new introduction and so on and so forth. So this is very, very interesting and moving forward. So please do respond to each other's posts, and we'll come back to Surbhi's screen. Oh, okay, I stopped sharing. Surbhi, you can start sharing again. Oh, we have some wonderful creations.
Thank you so much, Anusha. I think that was really important. Looking forward that we are wanting to generate conversation and learn from each other. So that's really important. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just one more answer to answer Nagalakshmi, who has raised a question of how do we know? We have given you two options. One of the options was ideally you should have got if you have sent in your email ID correctly, if you have typed it in, you would have got the query, as in you would have got a copy of the response if you had said that you wanted it. Another is that you would have seen at the click of submit. If you're still confused whether you have filled it or not, please ask in the course queries, push that as a question saying pre-course survey done or not done, and ask whether have I done it. We will get back to you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And as you can see, just to add to what Anusha just explained, basically on the mobile, if you're taking this particular course to your app, so then again, you don't click on create a new post, but add a response when you click on a particular thread to reply to that thread. If you want to start a brand new discussion, then you click on create a new course. So this is just from the angle of the app. Yeah. So quickly about the assignments. Basically, for Unit 2, Session 2, as you know, this is essentially a planning course and with a focus on designing activities for the English language classroom. So this activity wants you to design a lesson plan based on whatever experiences you've had through the course. Unit 1 has extensively dealt with all the skills of English language teaching. So you design a lesson plan and then you upload your lesson plan on the platform. After you've done it, you can upload a PDF or even an image of a handwritten lesson plan. But a clear image because it should be easier for us to read. So ensure that. After you have uploaded it, you have to just there'll be a text box. Don't worry, we'll send you a video for all of these processes. After you have uploaded it, you write the word uploaded in the text box, click on the upload button, attach a file, click on the upload button, and submit your response. Post this particular assignment has a section of peer assessment as well, right? And for peer assessment, you will have to assess the plans of 2 other course participants, and the rubric is given within that activity. You'll see a list of criteria on which you need to assess the other plans, and your lesson plan also will be reviewed by 2 of your peers. So we try to do this through this exercise. You kind of get to read other lesson plans, and it's always more democratic to let your peers assess or give comments on your lesson plan. So don't just use the criteria, also try and give some qualitative comments to your uh, to the fellow course participants. We'll be sharing a video, a step-by video of how this can be done, how to upload the assignment, how to assess your peers, and we will put it in one of the discussion forum posts. Anusha, you want to add in something here?
One is that the file has to be about 5 MB in size, but also you have a chance to do this in stages. You can keep coming back to the course and editing, and you can save your option. Also, one of the questions we've had a lot of times, which Surbhi also keeps answering, but is why peer assessment? What is the staff going to do? We are going to look at the assessment. Definitely, we will be the final authority on the assessment, but this is something that happens in a language classroom, right? When we are marking spellings, we make each other the students assess each other. It's a power, it is a democracy, it is also learning from others' mistakes. It is being able to communicate and give feedback effectively. So one of the things in Surbhi, as she has designed in the lesson plan, is all this part of importance of feedback. So this aspect of giving feedback in just 2 assignments in a course with more than 100 participants is just to tell about how to give feedback. So it is that process, how will I give something that is constructive? So this is also a learning opportunity and it's a part of the task as such. Yeah, just wanted to emphasize that.
And absolutely, and that's why I said, apart from just marking the criteria that are given in the exercise, use this as an opportunity to give qualitative comments, ask questions, or have some comments about the plan, so that we get into this habit of giving feedback in a constructive way and use it for our language classrooms. Yeah. Okay, the second assignment. So this you might not have seen yet because it will be released on the 27th of June. This is basically, I'll not go into too much details because you'll go through the unit yourself and figure out, but just to give you an overview, here you're going to design an authentic assessment task which is aligned with the objective of your lesson. We are going to talk about alignment between learning objective and assessment task in this unit. Then you're going to create a criteria which is quite subjective related to your task. Whatever task you've created, you list down the criteria to assess students' performance, and then you implement it in your classroom. So these are this is the assignment. Now we very well understand, we have given some ideas about how to implement. We have given 2-3 options. We would ideally like, if you have access to students, you pick option 1 or option 2. whatever is suitable, whatever is feasible in these times. If absolutely you don't have access to students at all, only in that particular situation, we have come up with an option 3 where you're given a case study document and you have to give a comprehensive reflection based on whatever you've learned. So this particular case study has some assessment tasks which have been created by some of our previous course participants, and you need to kind of give a reflective argument, ideas, or alternate ways to do it, or why do you like a particular way, etc. A comprehensive reflection based on whatever you've done in the course. So that's option 3 for you. But ideally, if there is access, it will be interesting to have you create and implement these tasks with your students. Yeah, this is assignment 3. Yeah. Anusha, do you wish to add anything to it?
No, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. We also wanted to use this session as an opportunity to delve a little deeper into the approach that we have spoken about earlier in the session 1 of the unit 1 of the course, the task-based language teaching approach. Now, what is this task-based language teaching approach? It basically, as the name suggests, it centers around a task, right? Now, what is this task that we are talking about? What is the task in a language classroom according to this TBLT approach? So first of all, uh, these I've directly picked it up from Prabhu and Noonan, who popularized this approach. Prabhu definitely in India with the Bangalore project, and Noonan has extensively worked on the communicative language teaching approach and TBLT approach, which a lot of theorists, a lot of people who work in the area of language education call it an extension. TBLT is called an extension of communicative language teaching approach. So here it's an activity by engaging in which the learner comes to a conclusion, the outcome, which is not basically the structure or form of the language, but through a given information, you are coming to a conclusion and trying to do that with whatever language repertoire you have and enhancing your language skills in the process. So as Noonan calls it, my own definition is that a task is a piece of classroom works where learners are manipulating, producing, interacting with each other in the target language. So in our case, it's English, and their attention is focused on meaning and also using their grammatical knowledge in order to complete that particular task. So the focus is more on meaning rather than conveying the form and structure of language. Yeah. So this is a task for us in a language classroom. Now, usually when we talk about task, what does a task entail? So this is what Jeremy Harmer talks about, that what is a task structure. So earlier we spoke about what is a task, right? Then we come to the fact that how do you do this particular task in your language classroom. So there's a structure to it. There are certain steps that have been identified. One is a pre-task where teacher prepares the students for the task, explains the main task that the students have. This pre-task can be a small activity also. After you have a pre-task, then there is the task cycle. Now, this is the space where the student engages in the task. He completes the task, he or she completes the task. They plan how they're going to complete the task, and they plan how they're going to organize and report the task to you or to anyone else, right? So that's the task cycle. And after the task cycle has been completed, then you have a post task. A post task is more about the analysis, the practice. So here you help the students notice certain grammatical, certain language skills or language structures that they've used. Not actually going through the language structures, but completing that particular task and identifying or noticing certain patterns that come up. So here basically the feedback of the teacher becomes really very important. Okay, so this I picked up from Rod Ellis and what he says about the task. So the task-based language teaching approach. So the primary focus is meaning. There should be some kind of gap, right? A gap where you have to convey an information, you are trying to do a task, to express something, to discuss, to problem solve an activity, For example, in Prabhu's Bangalore project, the task is simply reading a railway schedule and then answering the questions. So some kind of gap needs to be there through which learners have to work. Learners should largely have to rely on their own language skills and non-linguistic skills in order to complete the activity. So the learners use all the skills that they have and in the process honing their skills while doing that particular task. And there has to be a defined outcome other than the language. So it's not just, you know, completing, writing certain questions, WH questions. No, that's the language outcome, but a clear outcome of the task. So if I have to find out a particular train that goes to my place, so that's the outcome of my task. I have to read that timetable, use my linguistic and non-linguistic skills, and uh, achieve that outcome, right? So, and uh, it's mostly a process based approach rather than a very product oriented, that okay, now we're going to learn about this language form or this language structure. It's more to do with the process, within the process, how it flows, how you use your skills, etc. Right? A lot of you ask us that, you know, how do you use this in your classroom. So I have earlier mentioned that the communicative approach, where the focus is more on communication, interaction, meaning making, rather than just learning the structure and form of the language. The TBLT approach is more of a method or way to do it. Jack Richard would call it more of a method or way to achieve the larger objective that the communicative language teaching approach has set. Now, we also understand that you all are, some of you are working in school, some of you are working with students separately, or even outside school, and you have a lot of pressure of, you know, syllabus and classroom size, etc. All these issues do come up. So how do you actually do such tasks in the classroom? So an interesting work by William Littlewood, he talks about you know, tasks in a range. So a teacher has to kind of figure out what range of activity and task is appropriate for my classroom, and to what length I can go, and how I can slowly move from the first point to the last point. So one is a non-communicative task. A non-communicative task would basically be any drill task or any grammatical exercise without any context or, you know, authentic placing to that particular task. Uh, then comes the pre-communicative tasks. Pre-communicative tasks or activities are basically where there is some sort of interaction happening, but they're not in that much into meaning making, but still there is more to language and language learning and language form. For example, you all do comprehension questions after lesson, right? So they're not exactly communicative, but uh, uh, but there is some aspect of interaction or communication happening. Then there are purely communicative tasks. Here you'll have some kind of activities where students will do surveys, where students will do interviews. They'll engage in a more communicative task, you know, discussion or problem solving, uh, some tasks together. So more open ended, very meaning oriented tasks that we have. Then I think this might work for our classrooms as well. There is a structured communicative task. So here the the teacher structures the activity, a communicative activity, to kind of see how it suits the level of our children and how it actually works for my classroom. So the activities are more structured. So it's not really very open ended. And the last is authentic communication, where you do open ended projects, where you do surveys or where you do interviews, which are quite open ended. You engage in large scale work, which is not actually directly related to learning of language. It's more authentic, but in the process you do. So these are the gradations that William Littlewood mentions, and he says that, you know, which I think we all can kind of think about and reflect. He talks about how a teacher can adapt and innovate within these particular gradations of tasks, right? Yeah. Okay, so why did we talk about TBLT approach? You must have noticed that in Unit 1, we've talked about everything separately. We've talked about reading skills, we've talked about writing skills, vocabulary, grammar, etc. very separately. But we, in the beginning only, we had indicated that language learning should be integrated. It's holistic, because when you authentically go outside and communicate, it doesn't happen in parts. So how you can use your understanding developed from, there are different kinds of thoughts we have exposed you to, different kind of positions that we have introduced. So how you can use that to integrate it into the TBLT approach that you can, do with your students. So how you can use it in your classroom is also one thing that you can reflect on and come back maybe on the discussion forums or even right now to think how it can happen in your classroom. Yeah. So that's it. Anusha, do you wish to add anything, or uh,
So one of the
yeah,
questions has been that from Rajesh, yeah, uh, is about the gap, which we will come back to. But another question that we had is, can we use task-based language learning for problem-solving approaches? And yes, we can. And we will we will look at those elements in terms of how you can connect it to problem solving. Very simple, and the way that Prabhu used it is to make it authentic tasks, and this is what Surbhi was talking about. So more questions in terms of how can we do this in today's times would be to have an integrated approach, and a lot of task-based learning has moved towards an integrated holistic approach of learning in the school and the classroom. And so with ICT, where we have said that you will have just about 100 days of teaching perhaps in the new post-COVID era, uh, then it is necessary that assessments and activities all become kind of integrated, and that these can be utilized in order to do the task-based approach. So you could be solving something in terms of math and then presenting how you manage to solve the math problem in English, and that becomes an activity. Or you could try and find information in social studies and be presenting it in English, and it becomes a task-based language learning approach, which is more holistic in nature. So I hope that that answers your query to some extent. Another query is, we will take that query towards the end. That's an important question, but we will take it towards the end. Yeah, Unit 2, Surbhi, over to you. Sorry.
yeah. Uh, we'll move ahead. Don't worry, Anusha is trying to take some questions in between, and we'll also open the podium for questions at the end. Uh, Unit 2 is about planning and designing language lessons. I have explained it earlier when I started that it is more to do with how to plan, what does a good lesson plan entail, what are the approaches used to plan lessons. And one such approach that we have discussed is the backward design approach. Now, this backward design approach was popularized by Wiggins in his book Understanding by Design, and we have tried to use it to design how to design your plans. So uh, my question is, sometimes teachers do use textbook lessons for creating plans, right? Our plans are based on lessons, and that goes well with the fact that we have to complete the syllabus also. But here they argue that we're using tools, which are tools are starting points basically. So textbook is a tool for us to achieve certain objectives, certain outcomes that we wish to see in our students after the year end maybe, or after the lesson end, or after a semester end, or after a term end, etc. But in backward design, we actually do this. We start from the end results that you wish to achieve, right? And this becomes then our starting point, and then we properly organize it. So if we want our children to achieve this particular objective, how do I actually now plan, or kind of assess my students to see if I have achieved that or not, and how do I actually achieve it? So once you have the starting point, you think of the evidence that you will need to kind of think about how it has been achieved, and also design instructional activities to achieve those objectives. So this is what is the approach. Now this approach is not only followed in lesson plans, they are talking about the larger picture of curriculum designing also. If you design courses, for example, if I've designed this course, did I have something in mind what I want my learners to take away from this course when I'm designing it. So that becomes my starting point. And in order to achieve that, what all did I do? Then you all make annual plans, right? You make a roadmap at the beginning of the year. So those are annual plans, which are then divided into unit plans and then divided into individual lesson plans. Now, this in itself is kind of a backward mapping. You start from the end year goal and then you come to individual lesson plan. And other than that, even when you're designing these individual uh, plans, the approach needs to be backward. Now, an interesting idea why this needs to be backward, because then it brings our focus to learning. When we start that we have to do this, then our approach is more of, what would we like to teach, what I want to do in my class. But when I use this approach, my focus automatically, not that our focus is not learning of student, it definitely is, but it becomes the forefront and it drives my planning in that particular way, right? So the focus then becomes more on learning. So this is an approach which is used in instructional designing, and it's worthwhile to use it even when we are making our unit plans or individual lesson plans, so that we have a clear cut idea of how do we want to structure it. So this is what we have introduced in Unit 2. I think I have kind of explained this, but still, you start with what are your desired results, that is the outcomes, which will inform your learning objectives. Then you move to how are you going to seek evidence of how my desired results have been achieved or not. Then this becomes our assessment, our lesson assessments, which we're going to do in Unit 3. And then comes how you plan your experiences and instructions. In Unit 3, we do talk about the alignment also, which is a separate thing. We do talk about alignment between our objectives and our instructions and our assessment tasks. Are they three in alignment? Which comes from this approach when you have the larger picture in mind, what do you want to achieve? Yeah. So this is just an overview of what you're going to learn about in Unit 2. Yeah, we also promised you that we're going to share some resources with you, online resources for language learning and teaching. And for this, over to Anusha. Yeah.
Well, yes, and yeah, we have been. So we will quickly after this, and we wanted to keep it short so that we can respond to more queries from you. Um, and so these are some questions that we have been asked in terms of resources, but there may be others that we have not addressed, and you're welcome to bring those in again and talk to us and ask us to, ensure that we give you the necessary feedback for it. So I'm going to share my screen again, primarily because I want to take you through to this wonderful site that is called storyweaver.org.in. And we will share these resources, of course, but they are very interesting to understand and talk about. So if you look at this site, it asks you to sign in, but there is also this creation tool, there is translation, and there are images. And in fact, some of the activities and some of the, we have been part of this connected learning initiative, CLICS, which has worked with schools in different states. And we have used some of their story ideas and created stories on their site, etc. So they have their own site, and you can create and read aloud and all of it. An interesting aspect is also one of the questions that someone was asking is, how does one teach language to students where the resources are very few and there is a resource constraint? So how do we do this? And Pratham did a very interesting thing during the pandemic. Pratham Books basically reached out and said, give us a missed call, and we will have on that missed call per day 2 stories that are read out to the child. So they can do it on a Nokia, the Dabba phone, or a landline, if that is all that they have access to, and it's a missed call. So they will call back and they would have a pre-recorded reading and speak to them and tell them the story with a lot of animation and tone. So this is the listening aspect. One of the questions we asked in Unit 1 is, are subtitles or the transcript, is it important? We have realized that students use it in multiple ways, and it is brilliant and beautiful. So a lot of you have said, yes, it is important, but think about what all can you use it for. So you can, of course, we can use it to we can use it in order to develop our spelling skills, to map reading to listening, and keep pace. And so you can improve your pace because the pace of the speaker may be at some level. But you could also use it in order to read ahead. I sometimes do that. I just sort of, skip out the audio and just read through the transcripts if I have it available, so that I can move ahead and be faster about it. So listening forces us to be patient. It forces us to consume information at a particular pace of whoever the speaker is, like here. But reading, you can go ahead, you can skim ahead, you can move ahead. So in a way, a lot of these activities are very useful to try and see what is it that children like doing. So if there is resource-rich things they can create, they can go to create, they have pictures, it's easy to drag and drop. It's also something that some of our teachers have used in order to create their own stories. So if you want to teach something and you want to have a presentation that is very interesting, you can actually try and say, what is the story level? And it's very interesting how Pratham Books looks at it. So it's also something that you can think about, as Surbhi was pointing out, as lesson planning. What is an easy level? Is it an easy level if it contains less than 250 words? Because that's one of the easiest things that the computer can train. But is it easy if it is 600 words? Is it very difficult if it is 1,500 words? I could have very simple stories for 1,500 words. So how is it that you want the book orientation? Does the story start with images? Does it start with words? So you can actually use these to create your own chart, and use backdrops, add a picture, save to the current page. It will just add, sorry, my net is slightly weak today. Otherwise, it's actually just that easy. I can just choose a picture and insert. And I can insert a text box, I can insert a speech bubble, and I can push in any kind of a data that I want. So these are kinds of tools that you can utilize to make your own presentations of a language classroom much more dynamic. And you can then even perhaps have a voiceover and record a screen by using Zoom or something, and record your screen and create a dynamic image. So these are ways that language learning can be made more dynamic. The audio of calling in, even if there are no transcripts, can still be something that is very dynamic. And so this is one way that we have. Another that we talk about very often is Clicks OER, which is, I'm sorry, we're promoting ours, but this is one of the tools that we have really found very useful, and our students love it. And when we are saying students love it, it is 78,000 students that we have managed to reach out to who love it. And so the tool is very simple. It enables you to add pictures. It enables you to, the Open Story tool, and use something like this. Can you do this on a PPT? Yes. How would you want to do it on a PPT? You can just add any image, you can edit, you can add an image, you can decide what images you want. So I could just have this image and add it, and it gets added. I could even use from the gallery if there are any images on that. I can take my own picture and add it. I can record, and it will ask me, do you want to allow it? And then I can record my voice and do it. So you can do this even with a presentation. But creation, which is one of the task-based language in terms of your first unit, is exactly what these activities deal with. There are also comic tunes and many others that actually allow you to do activities. But this was something that we had been asked quite often, so we thought we will try and repeat. This is a very interesting thing because it allows you to even type in Hindi if you want. I haven't currently enabled my computer to enable Hindi typing, but any character can be typed in. And so students can use how they want to have their recording and listen to it. And you won't be able to hear it right now, but yeah, it will enable you to record. If you don't like what you hear, you can again record. And it will immediately bring it back to 0 and you can record again. So this is a learning by doing task. They can save the file, they can use any of these. These are kinds of activities that we can talk about when we are dealing with story making and all of it. All of these are also CC BY. And so what it means is that you don't have to worry about the content. You don't have to worry about the fact that there is a license here. It is all something that all that you need to do is give them attribution saying that this is Pratham Books or anything of that sort. So it's all open. It's all under open OERs. Yeah, I would stop sharing. And these creations are completely downloadable and free from Storyweaver once you sign up. All that they ask you is to sign in with your email ID. And they have fun activities. And in addition to that, there are also curated activities. So lessons are curated by editors. There are all of us, like TIS has its own site. I mean, Clicks has its own site where we have said why we have chosen certain stories for our own Clicks modules. So all of those are there. And there are some many other activities. In fact, if you go to Clicks OER, which is where it is, one of our teachers actually used something called music blocks and tried to get them to work with that. There is a tool called Audacity or any audio recording tool, and you can get students to work and record their voices. I work with my young cousins and they love recording their voice and reading out a story. So when we tell children read aloud, it is nice also to sometimes get them to just record and listen to themselves. It's also very fascinating to see how they change their tone, their modulation, their intonation once they hear, because it's so difficult for them to know what they have spoken, right? I mean, it's very difficult for me to understand what I have spoken. I had this one class where in 2 hours, I think I used the word I think, according to my students who were busy counting it 72 times. And I was like, what? And so you need someone to, record that and use it. Now, I think it's a very easy kind of statistic to focus, and I made a conscious attempt that I would not use it for the next 3 weeks to do that. But it's also something very interesting. But if I had a wrong pronunciation, then how would I know? I mean, I wouldn't. So it's very interesting to think of all these activities that we can do with our children. Now we will open the floor to the questions. We are almost at the running out of time. Surabhi, was there anything else that, yeah, we will be sharing these and more. Please ask us questions because we have a lot of resources sometimes that we even forget till we need it to use. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of other people who use it. There is for Braille, there is a Braille reader that I came across when I was teaching some course, and that was fascinating. So those are kinds of good questions that we can deal with it. Yeah. So over to you. I think we will allow you to unmute yourself. And
yeah. Yes, and these resources we'll mention in the discussion forum. We have some for you to kind of use if you want to send some videos, etc., to your students. We are going to post all these resources after the discussion today, and maybe you can explore some of these and share your experiences with us, like most of you have done it for the BBC app and have listed out how you're going to use it in your classroom. So we're going to follow the same thing. And in case some of you have shared some resources with us, we have been looking at them. But even if you have more resources or online applications that you've been using, you can share them with us, and even we would learn from you, because I'm sure there are
Yes.
many applications which even we are not aware of, many resources. So please feel free to put them in the discussion forum.
So, one of the other things is that a lot of people ask us what makes a good task or what makes a good resource. And it doesn't. I mean, what makes a good resource is how you use it. So, for instance, Zoom was never supposed to be an educational. It was supposed to be for business meetings. We are using it for education. Um, you know, PowerPoints were never supposed to be educational, they were for businesses. And now everyone, I think educationists are using it the best and the most. So how we use it is up to us. And so we just need standards of how to use it. So what is good, what is inclusive, those are things. And yeah, there are some questions which are there in the chat, and definitely please note, you can go at your own pace. We have 6 weeks to complete the course. We are just releasing it because some of you have also expressed a concern that we want to make it self-paced, but we also didn't want to overwhelm you by making you, giving you the full gamut right at the beginning. And we wanted you to spend some time on introductions. That is one of the reasons why we are pacing the first 2 weeks. But after that, it is up to you. You choose when you want to do it. If you want to complete it far ahead of time, you can, but there are certain activities that we would be getting you to come back, like the peer assessment. It is also to keep engaging. We are all professionals here and we will learn from each other. And that's one of the things that we had. Yeah. So, Storyweaver site, does the student need a login? No. You can download and you can share. The Clicks Open Story tool, again, you may need it. Another thing that a lot of teachers are doing is they are downloading those images from Storyweaver and putting it on their PPTs and sharing that and recording that screen or something of that sort. But Storyweaver is definitely downloadable for you to be able to share as a story, as a PDF. You can actually download it as a PDF. Yeah. So that's one of the questions. I don't know whether I've been missing out other questions, but I'm sure we'll come in. You're all free to unmute yourself. If you go and check on your unmute box, you will be able to unmute yourself now. Actually, for the last 5-10 minutes. Yeah.
Good evening.
So, yes. Are there questions in terms of
There's
it?
one question, ma'am. My name is Gaurav.
Yes. Hi, Gaurav. Come.
Yeah.
Hello.
Do ask.
Ma'am, I just completed the first unit, first part, and the TBLT approach, I was going through it.
Mm-hmm.
So in that approach, the last part was language focus, and I need some clarity about what does that part actually describes in the entire TBLT approach. Because is it what the teacher is only going to give feedback, or the feedback of students are also taken and then it is presented by the teacher as a whole? How it is done, ma'am?
Excellent
Exactly.
question. So we go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So what you just said, see, the language focus part is more about analyzing and bringing to notice that, what kind of language structures or language skills did you use to complete this particular task. Now, not only that, apart from that, as we discussed that in the TBLT approach, the outcome is not just language focused, right? The outcome is apart from that also. So my outcome might be, again, I gave an example earlier, I'll repeat the example. I want to find out at what time this particular train goes from this spot to this spot, and I have to find that. That's an information gap activity, and that's my outcome. Now, when you do such a task, or if you're doing surveys with students, so the outcome is also that survey, and the outcome is also what did you use to create that survey, to kind of go and do that survey, what kind of language skills were involved. Definitely, apart from the teacher's role becomes really important here. She should take in, or he should take in, the feedback coming in from the students as well. It's a good practice, and as well as they might have noticed certain language skills or structures that they've been using, which you might want to highlight. So definitely students' feedback and also teachers' feedback, to bring this all together and put this together and give it to students as a holistic exercise. So that's really important. So that is where the last part, the language focus, or we call it the analysis and focus part, becomes really very, very important. It is here where we kind of sit and reflect after that particular authentic, communicative, contextual task has been completed. Yeah.
Right.
Right, ma'am. Ma'am,
Yeah.
and provide the time that we have in a class of 45 minutes or 40 minutes, do we need to structure it in one class or can we do it in a different class as well?
No, definitely you do not have to structure it in one class, because obviously, because as you mentioned, the kind of strength of that we work with, and even in the nature of tasks that you design, it's okay that a particular, that you might have an introductory task and you take one period, which is of 40 minutes to do that task, and you pick it up from there in the next particular session or the next particular classroom. So that is absolutely fine. We don't have to rush through this particular structure in one classroom. So even for the lesson plans, good that you brought this up. Sometimes we feel that, you know, this particular lesson plan I've created, I have had these outcomes in mind, and now this is how I want to do it. Should I create it for just one class? You can absolutely create one lesson plan catering to one outcome or one objective, which can go beyond sessions. See, sessions are just a administrative way of kind of, you know, having your timetable ready, etc. But your planning and your designing activities can go beyond that. So,
Right.
absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am.
That's a very good question, Gaurav. And there are a few others where there are activities which are talking about, you know, parents are not comfortable letting their children use apps. Learning, designing classroom experiences, I hope through one of the reasons why we started with TBLT, and so we can come in and correct me if I am going off topic. But one of the reasons why we use TBLT was to engage and say that let's reimagine a classroom where the importance and the focus is on communication and not necessarily on looking at a reading lesson and saying, oh, I need to know it like a history lesson. I need to know um, Maharana Pratap. I mean, you read Maharana Pratap in the language textbook and you read Maharana Pratap in the history textbook. What is the difference if you are going to ask the same questions? So you can make them do drama. You can make them do activities of intonation. One of the things that a very simple one in TBLT, and we have a webinar on this. Maybe we will share that link also with you.
Yeah.
Some of those are actually what we did, what we are talking now is also done there. The simplest activity that I have done with adults and children, and we have had a lot of fun doing it, is getting them to just speak sad, happy, sad, angry. So both happy is it has a high intonation, you raise your volume. And in angry also, you generally raise your volume. And sad, you generally suppress your volume. So the difference in that when the children are doing it, it could be with one word, like hi, 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 or any of that. I mean, I'm obviously not intonating properly right now, but small children actually do the best and adults actually take time, but it really improves their speaking skills. Because one of the most, worst things that people have is, oh, they're speaking very bold. What they're speaking is extremely boring and one monotonous way of speaking, because their tone is monotone, is one tone, monotone. And if you can just get them to do this kind of intonation practice, they will be better at, understanding the pitch, the volume, the raise and fall of voices and all of it. So you can do many such activities like that with them. And the use of ICT is information communication technology. So it's not just about apps. I do understand parents' concern with apps. I know that there was this time when people were, trying to say that, children are so addicted to apps, they should go out and play. And there must be physical activity. But we can try and see how apps can get you these activities to engage and share communication. So the socialization aspect can be brought in. So these are some activities that is there. In private schools, I think one of the other questions that you had is that in the private schools, people, unless it is discussed in a government forum or amongst education policy, we can't move ahead with regards to. I think there is a change happening, especially thanks to COVID. Uh, when our education minister comes out and says that you must have just 100 days of teaching, one of the questions that comes in then is, what is teaching? And how do we ensure that a lot of our learning outcomes are met despite the fact that there is teaching? We're also understanding that rote memorization is not important. We are understanding that we can pass an entire generation of students across across syllabuses without any final exams. So all this, this question of how exams are and all of it is redundant. So then, what is learning and what is assessment and what is learning outcome? All of these are very important that come to be, and these have to be focused upon, and we are going to have debates on this. This is not solved by any means. We are going to have debates on it. Yeah, I think a few more questions. How can we help students build vocabulary using ICT tools? Teaching phonetics also. Surbhi, you want to come in for any one of these questions? We will come to that question that is raised on timetabling your own assessments at the end. But Surbhi, you want to come in here for either of the last two questions?
Yeah, definitely for vocabulary building. See, we have discussed this in the course also, but yes, there are many ICT tools that you can use for vocabulary building. One of it is definitely the online applications that you come across. See,
there is some disturbance. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you move away from the mic, wait, let me see if someone is unmuted. It's moving.
Is it better?
Shwet. No, it is someone called Shweta is, I'm just muting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Surbhi, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So there are many ICT, applications and tools that you can use for vocabulary development. See, a lot of games are available online, and I think me and Anusha can also share some of these applications with you. So definitely those, there are online crosswords, there are online puzzles available which you can use. So definitely vocabulary building has a lot of scope to develop them through games which are now available online with feedback and immediate feedback and feedback given immediately to the answers that you give. So I think that's really important that we include that in our classrooms if possible with our students. Yeah.
But I would just like to add that
Yeah.
one of the arguments made and being made and increasingly across times is that let's not isolate language learning from skills and of communication. And this is just a tool. And so story making, communicating is the best way to have language. So if you can make it more applicable in terms of how to communicate, a very simple game that you can play with children who have to do this. For instance, college students, many of my college students will ask this question on, we have GRE and we have GMAT, and we have in GRE, the old GRE pattern used to have this long list of words that no one in regular language would ever use. I mean, why would I want to use certain words like ameliorate and stuff like that? So one way of doing it is take a thesaurus, which you can get in an app, which is a very simple thing, right? Like a thesaurus is just something that you can get as an app. You can download it. Like a dictionary, you can download a thesaurus. And ask the students whether they can use about 7, 8, 10 words a week, depending on their age group, to use something else than the regular words that they use. For instance, they can use the word, I'm going to perambulate, instead of using, I'm going to walk. It has multiple effects. I mean, I always, and this is for young children, if you're the worst insult to give your siblings And I have a younger brother. But the worst insult to give them is to give them praise that they can't understand. So if you tell them that you have a phenomenological brain, which I did when he was a fourth standard, and he didn't understand, but I said it in a tone which was, oh, you have such a phenomenological brain. He thought I was being insulting. He went and complained to my mother, and it was so much fun. It's a word that both he and I have never forgotten in our life because of the emotion associated with that word. And so if we can create those moments of emotional fun, emotion of fun, they will remember it better. We have enough studies proving that memory and is better when there is emotion associated with it. And that is one of the reasons why stories are brilliant to create those those moments of emotion. Children by heart and remember film dialogues because they're emotionally connected. We wish they would remember it in that same way. So can we create those kinds of same emotion for them in the classroom? So that would be one thing. And it has, but we will be CBSE and all of those other elements. The other element that I would like to go back to, and this is one just related to the question earlier posed, is phonetics. It is important to learn phonetics. One of the easier ways to do it is to, of course, teach at the beginning what are the kinds of sounds that English language has. You're asking, primarily me, I'm an arguer against pronunciation being correct, because I keep going back to this question of what is the correct pronunciation? Is it the British pronunciation? They no longer are the largest speakers of English in the world. Is it the American pronunciation? Their president doesn't seem to know English. So I don't know. What is Australian pronunciation? There is Canadian pronunciation. And then there is the largest community of English speakers in the world, Indians. And we don't have one pronunciation either. We have multiple pronunciations. So if you can speak with confidence, that doesn't mean that we don't teach phonetics, but I think if we can give them enough modeling, children do pick up. I have, and this is a personal story, but I have personally traveled around the country a lot as a child, which meant that for the longest time, when I was in college, I was teased about the fact that my friends never knew what I would use for McDonald's. I would say McDonald's, McD, McDonald's, McDonald, because Donald Duck. I had umpteen pronunciations for that. Okay, so, and it's fun. I mean, it's a nice memory to have now. So, and I'm an English teacher, and not a bad one. So
And,
I think it's okay. Yeah.
and in fact, now Anusha has brought this discussion up, and you've asked this question. So yeah, there are no easy answers to this, but there's a lot of debate, as Anusha said, between the people who support whole language approach,
Yeah.
vis-a-vis people who support phonetics, and now a lot of emphasis has been given on the hybrid approach. Basically, you do make the student aware of the sounds, but in a very embedded and in a very contextual way. You do not make him see sounds as separate from the text he or she is reading or the print material that he or she has around us. So it's usually a mixed approach. So a lot of people whom I've interacted with, phonetics works with young students, but not in isolation at all. Otherwise, it just becomes a drill of pronunciations and, focusing on actually correct
So,
pronunciation,
yeah.
which we should not kind of overemphasize on. So this is the other side of the coin which I wanted to bring
And
forward.
to just bring it back, because a lot of people have started talking about pronunciations, but even in your discussions, there are quite a few on pronunciation and spellings. Uh, uh, and it's very interesting because the American school boards do not penalize students for spellings. You can write psychology as Sykollogy or GI, and they do not cut marks. And this is at college level. I know that, which irritates me as an Indian teacher, because that's the first thing that I will take my red pen to and circle. but I'm not supposed to cut marks for that, because they're like, can you make out and can you understand? And I'm like, this is worse than WhatsApp language. That's one. The second part of it is that when we talk of pronunciation, and this is a kind of question that I have very often, and for us to reflect on, we don't have any answers. Can we improve people's pronunciation? Yes. Must we improve people's pronunciation? Yes. Why is it that pronunciation, but pronunciation is never static. Pronunciation is changing. The way we talk about schedule and schedule, we accept both today because America is a very powerful country and Britain is the country from which we had language. Mate and might, as we listen to more of Australians speaking on the field and they call each other might and instead of mate, we accept might as a pronunciation of mate. And I know that I am not making the proper pronunciation that an Andrew Simons or someone would do. But we also have seen, and if we are looking at even people like cricketers like Harbhajan Singh or people whose English was not very good at the beginning, as they are improving, as they are practicing, as they are speaking, and as they are receiving more information, they do go towards the more popular conventional information. So pronunciation will get improved. It doesn't have to be a very conscious activity that we necessarily talk about all the time. We need to give them input and models, of course, and the language flow is thing. So I think Karam Jigdal, that's a good question to ask. Even with writing, there are experiments which have been done where like the task-based language teaching, we only write, we make students spend, and this is an activity that has been done. It's an experiment performed multiple times across different countries and different age groups and different literacy levels, with the same effect. In fact, very minimal variation. Simple task, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, depending on the age group. It can go from anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. They have to write something. So this is practiced in a classroom for 30 days, about across a span of 4 weeks and 4 to 5 weeks, 30 days. And the first 2 days, students don't know what to write. So they will write 2 words. Another day, they will write 5 words, and so on and so forth. At the end of the 30th day, you find that the students have improved in not just the amount that they're able to write, but in the flow that they're able to write. This proves why the diary method of maintaining your diary is a useful activity, because you do get the fact that students who write regularly do improve their speech, even if it is not, their language, even if it is not assessed, even if it is not gone back to. As you use more language, you do improve. So you can try that. And that's the task-based activities that come in. Yes.
And also then the debate of accuracy versus fluency comes in every aspect, whether you're speaking, whether you're writing, and we've tried to discuss this in the course as well. There's too much focus or emphasis on pronunciation and getting the words right and getting the diction right, then somewhere it affects the confidence. We have to also understand how it's connected with students and how they perceive language and how they want to use language and what is the purpose of language learning. So this entire thing creates a lot of focus on accuracy, which in turn has an effect on fluency. So definitely, as Anusha pointed out, overly assessing my learning for these kind of correctnesses, for these kind of accuracies doesn't really help me become very fluent language users.
Yeah, and grammar is, again, so one of the questions I have is, we very often talk about spellings and grammar and pronunciation, but very often I have noticed that pronunciation is limited to English classrooms as a discussion and a debate. I have never heard a Hindi teacher or a Marathi teacher correct me about how my pronunciation is bad. And my pronunciation in some of my language classrooms as I traveled around was extremely bad. My mother still has a problem with the way I pronounce Tamil, and that's my mother tongue. Increasingly has a problem with it. But, you know, these are questions to ask ourselves. There is no answer. You will find enough debate on both sides of the argument. And I think that is very good to have, because then we can strive to be the best. And do we want to give importance to grammar? Yes, but can we do this in a way that makes it meaningful? So one of the questions in Unit 2 also comes in with this element of how can we make meaningful activities? So a question that I have at times is, we very often are, I'm not going to answer this question, but you can think about it. Why do we use this perfect tense at all, perfect aspect? And if we can make these kinds of meaningful activities for them, for instance, a lot of students who are from Hindi medium coming to English medium for the first time struggle with these articles that they suddenly have to learn, a and the, which we don't have in Hindi, not in that same way. So why do we have it? How do we have it? How does it make understanding more conscious? Those are ways of trying to emulate, and with more practice and input, people do pick up. If you talk to any salesperson, he knows perhaps more language and better language than many language teachers do, because rozi roti ka sawal hai kind of thing. So they learn. Yeah, but a lot of this has now gone into something that I should not perhaps have been debating, and we can debate this, and I hope we'll continue these discussions over the aspect as well. Yeah. But there was another question that was raised, Surbhi, which is that can we, while, is there a kind of timeline that is preferable in completing assignments, because they don't want to rush? So that was one of the questions asked. And the other is, I think we have answered some of the queries. If you're not, yeah. Is there a preferable timetable?
Yeah, we have, if you go to the course, in the course introduction, we have created a tentative timetable to help you pace your course. We also understand that it takes time for you to kind of figure out that, how to time it to complete it, though it's self-paced, but we have taken care of that, and we've created a short timetable, a short schedule. You can go to the course introduction and look at it. I think, yeah, thanks, Anusha. Anusha is sharing the screen. Just scroll down. Yeah. Yes. So this is the course schedule. So we have tried to divide it across these 6 weeks, and this is suggestive. Yeah. It's absolutely okay if you finish it earlier, or you take more time in doing unit 1 and less time in unit 2. That's absolutely okay. But this is suggestive, and you can kind of refer to this. This is in reference to the question that we had on suggestive weeks or timeline that you could suggest. So, yeah. And there's one more question on certification. Anusha, can you just scroll up? There was a question on how do we get certificates. So I had mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, in order to earn the certificate, you need to engage minimum of 10 points from each unit. You need to attempt all the 3 units. You need to upload the assignments. We have discussed 2 assignments here. You need to upload both those assignments. Also, you can see what grading system we will be following. So this is the 10-point grading system. This is the TIS grading system that we have, right? Yeah. So you can read it. We'll just let this be on the screen for like.
Yeah. And it's there on your course. This is the first thing you come to the course as a pointer. We thought it was useful to have this for you to know. And when we talk of assignments, please understand that there are two assignments in the way that we traditionally think of assignments as essay uploads or points. Um, all the other checkboxes, etc., are also assignments. And in that context, I know that there was that entire motivation activity that we had as a question which is raised. So we are looking into it. We did not have, this is our second run in an open forum. We did not have this problem last time. So we're looking into it, and we will send out a mail figuring out whether the second attempt also does not enable you to get the points. I think that was one of the questions that Ravi raised also in the chat, but also in the discussion. And we are looking into it, so definitely that is there. There are similar activities like that ahead, and I don't think any one of you has faced a problem there. It is just this one particular activity, so the technical team is looking into it, and we will get back on that. So don't worry about those 4 marks. Yeah. Yeah. So any other that that we have? I cannot see the post description of the discussion topics. Could you explain that again? Sulakshana, in the sense, I think Surbhi, in your app, there was a problem
in the PPT. You want me to share my screen once more?
Stop, I'll stop sharing. Yes, modern day, I mean, one of the things that we are going back to this question on pronunciation is like some hot topic. So modern day workplaces are focusing on pronunciation, but if you look at it now in a lot of call centers, they've actually said neutral pronunciation. And neutral pronunciation has to do with the fact that you just need to not have an accent. There's a difference between pronunciation and accent. A lot of people have different pronunciations. Very popular one is schedule, which is a very popular one, but also things like, to come back to this topic, and I will very quickly answer this, in even just Liverpool, which is just about a few kilometers away from the Queen's, palace, they don't say bus, they say bus, they say gov, they say governor. And the South, in the South of Americas, or even within America, in Texas and all, they will say darling. They don't say darling, or running. They will say running. So it ends with a n rather than a g, n sound. And so what you notice about French, what you notice about Germans, what you notice about Spanish, and all these other countries' people, is that they speak their language with pride and confidence. When you hear the New Zealand Prime Minister come out and give a speech, her speech and her pronunciation of words do not sound the way that we speak or that the Queen of England speaks. And so I think we need to be careful about it. I am not saying let's not teach anything. I'm saying that let's not I think both Surbhi and I, and Surbhi was talking about this actually, is that let's not undermine their confidence in speaking, especially young children. Let them start speaking. Every one of us makes these mistakes. We all have grown up saying melon for lemon, lemon for melon, and improved over a period of time as we practiced.
Yeah. And in fact, many of you are discussing in the chat section also that, at some level, do we not have a proper pronunciation or diction? See, at some level, we won't say absolutely no, you should not have a particular, you should not have a proper pronunciation, etc. But we need to also question ourselves, right? What is proper? Where has this come from? See, these kind of questions, then maybe they don't give us a specific answer, but these kind of questions then help us build strategies for our classrooms when we are dealing with younger kids. How do we strategize our feedback? How do we give feedback to children? Is it just by telling them, oh, this is not right? Or do we think of something else? Do we think of modeling, or we think of increasing the language input in the classroom? So these kind of questions then become really, really very important. So yeah.
And I think, yeah, I do. We are almost till 7 on in it. So Lakshna, to go back to your question, the description is what you are asking. Um, this comes under the discussion tab, and it just is the post of discussions which you can see on the left. It's only when you click on it that you will see what is on the right post that Surbhi has done. Alpana,
So
I don't know. I don't know, but language is not static. See, some of the questions that you're asking are brilliant questions, and I think we should continue this debate. And it is a debate across things. Typewriters have changed the way that
yeah, exactly.
you know, the way that certain spellings are made in Indian languages, because the computer could not take some of those characters. Pronunciations have changed. The reason why we have psychology and not psychology is because the pronunciation changed, but in olden times, because they were writing by hand and they couldn't go back to all those manuscripts and correct all of it because it was very expensive. I mean, till 14th century, even till 16th century, printing was not very cheap. So till the printing press of the Gutenberg press in 14th century, you really didn't have anything. It was very expensive to write. Only the upper class had books. So they couldn't change the spelling. So we are stuck with psychology, which has a P silent in it because of such kinds of problems. So maybe things will change, and maybe we won't, and maybe that's also okay. This course is part of a program called reflective teaching, and so we will have more reflective we will get you to reflect and tell us what you think is right. So we're very happy for all those, arguments that say, no, pronunciation is important. We want those arguments. So
And
please.
yes, and absolutely the kind of discussions that we had here, I think we can continue this on the discussion forum. These are really very rich. So we would encourage you to post more on the discussion forum and talk to each other and
Surabhi,
respond to these comments.
sorry, can I just come in for a
Sure,
minute,
sure.
please, Rajesh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
hi, so I'm the one who got engaged in this, and what I'm saying is, so I mean, under this, so what is right? आपके लिए क्या सही है? मेरे लिए क्या करता है? Under this, the totally cloudy debate. So a word called honorable is always honorable. You can never, you have to stop, or probably what I meant was not breaking your confidence or not interrupting midway, but it can't be pronounced as honorable, okay? And then there is the and the. So somewhere, if the teacher knows, one is, we all know that while a student is reading, you don't interrupt midway to break the confidence. That's what, not that I was suggesting at all. But I said, I mean, pronunciation, a bad one really sounds bad to the ear, and then the teacher has to step in somewhere, or probably demonstrate or exemplify by pronouncing himself or herself the right way. And so not all words are like, okay, and let's not go to England or America to to get the debate there. I mean, the way Surbhi, we hear her presentation, so that's neutral Indian way of doing, and where most of the time the words that we also use in everyday are how they need to be pronounced. Mother tongue influence, or all those are there, but do we not need to correct them at all? Do we be, I mean, should we be okay with
That's,
that?
yeah,
That's what my
that's a good question. And
Yeah.
that is definitely, and that is something that, so we want to take it up.
Yeah, the idea is not to definitely not correct them at all, but basically, again, like I said, think of ways how to correct it, right? Think of strategies or feedback that you are going to give to the students in order to correct that pronunciation. And also, as a teacher, your intuitive sense of when it is right to correct, at what level, right? Also, more increasing the language input, as I said, right? you see that particular word, or you see that how language is being used across in different kind of conversation, in different kind of podcasts, etc. So that also helps. So the way you give feedback, the way you expose the students to language input also makes a difference. So we are not going to take extreme positions of saying that, okay, we don't correct them at all, but find a middle way to kind of get into this idea of how do you give constructive feedback, and
Yeah.
at what time is it necessary to intervene. So that, I think, as a teacher, we all have that intuitive sense of, at what time now it's the right time to kind of tell them, okay, it's a different way to, there's a different way to do this, and how do we say that, right? there are
One,
there are
yeah.
actually
Which is a skill to be
literature.
learned also, isn't it? Which is a skill that teacher needs to learn also. So not
Yes,
everyone knows when to do that.
Yes.
There's a right way of doing it.
Also,
There's a wrong way.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
yes.
in terms of feedback, sometimes modeling help?
Mhm.
For instance, just rephrasing the students' points in the correct English might enable the student to pick it up. For instance, all the children, when they are learning their first language, appalling pronunciation when we all began to learn language, but we picked it up because our parents spoke in a particular way and kept repeating the phrases, but they didn't correct us. So can we think of those ways are a question. This doesn't mean, and of course spellings also. As I said, I feel hurt when I see my cousin's children's books with appalling spellings, and I'm very tempted to look at it. And then I keep looking at it and saying, okay, so they will learn through input. So that's a very good thing that I learned, is how input might, increased input and focused input might help them learn and correct. Children do pick it up in that way. So yes. And
And
yes, please do call us Surpi and Anusha. You don't have to call us back. Yeah.
in
Thank you.
fact, in one of the sessions, you might read this, that one way of giving feedback, for example, since we are talking about it now, is to consolidate feedback and not give it individually. So these are small, small things that we need to take care of as a teacher when we are kind of dealing with students, because language is a very, uh, sometimes it's a very emotional, it has a very emotional aspect to it also. So that's the point we're trying to make, that how you find a middle way of not affecting the confidence and also giving a proper exposure to students to kind of speak and properly effectively communicate.
So yeah, I think we have, we are at 7:03. We had
Yeah.
said if there is nothing that is really urgent. I think Santosh had asked for books and reference books. At the end of every session, Surbi has ensured that there is the references we have used for that unit are made available. You can definitely look them up. Some of them are open readings where links are being provided. Some are books and readings that are more close source. So please do look them up. But if you have any specific point, like you said here, practice of English teaching, we will be happy to put them up in the course queries and share that. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, for
And
being here.
yes, and thank you for joining and making it very interactive and very enriching for both of us. We have uh, we've had interesting discussions today. So thank you. We will share the recording of this session with everyone and also post the resources that we have used in the presentation today in a discussion forum for you to explore, reflect on it, and share your experiences with us. Yeah.